Welcome to the PA Insights podcast, powered by NCCPA, the place where we explore the people, research, and real-world trends shaping the PA profession. Today, we're taking a closer look at one of the most dynamic and rapidly evolving corners of the PA world, military medicine. Recently, new data points to a major shift in the makeup and mission of the military PA Corps. The demographics are changing, skill sets are expanding, and the demands on readiness have never been more complex. To help us break all this down, we're joined by someone who has truly lived every dimension of military medical service. Colonel James Jones is a 36-year veteran of the U.S. Army, the current Army PA consultant to the Surgeon General, and the 2025 AAPA PA of the Year. His distinguished career spans combat medicine, executive leadership roles, global health operations, and tactical medical service at the White House. Today, he's here to help us understand what these data trends mean for readiness, diversity, and the future of sustainability in the PA force. We'll explore the inflection point the Corps is facing, the rise of the Generalist Plus clinician, and the human factors like burnout and retention that will determine the profession's long-term strength. So let's dive in. All right, very welcome to have on the PA Insights podcast, Colonel Jones. Colonel, thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. So, you described this moment as a pivotal inflection point for the military PA profession. I wanted to ask, what do you see as the biggest forces driving that change right now?
That's a fantastic question. I really do think we're at that inflection point, and really it's driven by a couple things that are converging at once. First off, the character of war that we support, our near-peer competition and contested logistics, and our center on formations of who we support, demands clinicians like PAs practice medicine in a really high complex environment that's constrained by resources. Second, for our profession, the healthcare system is under pressure for cost, burnout, and more importantly, technology disruption, which we're seeing across the space and AI. And the military isn't insulated from any of that. And then lastly, our PA profession within the military is drastically maturing. We are sought after as a strategic asset. We're no longer looked at as a second set of hands or in the clinic. We're leading readiness, policy, and promotional health across the entire force. And when you really look at those forces together along with shaping, it changes the way we're looking at the military PA and our profession.
So the data in military medicine highlights that the median age of active duty PAs is around 41. Are we seeing rising numbers of women and Hispanic clinicians joining those ranks as well? And how is that diversity shaping the culture and capability of PA Corps today?
Excellent question. That demographic story really matters for a lot of reasons. The median age we're seeing is really in those early 40s, and we have a lot of experience in the force looking at people who have deployed, led teams, seen multiple phases of conflict and reform before they move into our profession. At the same time, though, we're seeing an increasing number of women and Hispanic PAs that want to serve, and we are looking at how we as a profession within the military have a broader racial, cultural, and professional diversity, making sure that those perspectives that matter mirror our soldiers and our families that we serve. And ultimately, we want everyone in the military to have a chance to apply for our profession and get a chance to go through PA school and really assume that greater role across the force.
So are there any ways that you're seeing the military PA Corps becoming more of a reflection of the nation's broader healthcare system in regards to that diversity?
I do in a lot of ways. You almost think of the military health system and the PAs as compressed version of the national health system. We certainly reflect the same issues, the chronic diseases, the same things with mental health, health equity, and digital transformation, and workforce burnout. And those same things are causing us to think about how do we integrate telehealth, analytics, team-based care, just like our civilian counterparts. And PAs are practicing in every space: primary care, emergency medicine, ICUs, behavioral health, and public health roles. And the big difference is that we wrap all of that inside our readiness mission, which is really important, preparing for the next large scale combat operations. Hopefully, we never see that, but we must prepare. But when you look at the clinical work itself, it's increasingly aligned with how our modern healthcare is delivered across the country, with the caveat that those that serve are unique and sometimes have a different diversity than what we see in some of our community, just based on where people serve from.
So you've also mentioned that PAs are moving from this traditional generalist model to what you're calling a generalist plus model, blending broad clinical skills with advanced specialty and digital readiness. Can you kind of help unpack for our listeners a little bit more specifically what that means?
Sure. The classic PA model is a broad generalist, strong in history, physical exam, common conditions. Generalist plus means still keeps that broad foundation, but you add depth in one or more domains that a force really needs. That might be a plus up in critical care, plus up in orthopedics, or behavioral health, or public health, or analytics. And today, it also means digital, comfortable using telemedicine, clinical decision support, such as Doximity, AI, and remote monitoring and data dashboards. Practically, that gives commanders someone who can cover the bases in any setting, and also leads in specific niche areas that multiply our force readiness capabilities, and really the entire team.
So you've led teams across combat, executive medicine, and public health. How have both technology and telemedicine transformed how military PAs are delivering care, especially in distributed or contested environments?
Yeah, excellent question. Technology has fundamentally changed our reach. If you think about in a dispersed or contested environment, such as large scale combat operation, telemedicine lets a PA in one location tap into subspecialty expertise halfway across the world and oversee medics and nurses operating forward with virtual supervision. We can review images, labs, vital signs, and near real time acknowledgement today, making it safer decisions about who needs evacuation, and let us monitor patients more closely with trends, push preventative care, and maintain continuity even when the patient's location changes every day, especially during the relocation in combat. It doesn't replace the PA. What it does is it extends the PA's influence across distance and time.
So, how do postgraduate fellowships and advanced training programs that PAs may be using prepare them for this new hybrid model of care that you're describing?
Another superb question. Postgraduate fellowships are accelerators. They take the strong generalist and give them a year or more focused, high volume experience in critical care, emergency medicine, surgery, orthopedics, or other specialties. And in the military context, the best fellowships also integrate operational medicine, leadership, and systems thinking. So the graduate doesn't just know how to manage a ventilator or trauma resuscitation, they know how to build protocols, train medics, and integrate that tele ICU experience and advise commanders. That's the hybrid we need: clinician, educator, and operational leader in one person.
So let's shift focus a little bit, talking about retention and readiness and burnout. You've pointed out that active duty PAs report longer hours, lower compensation, higher rates of burnout. What do you think is behind that imbalance, and how is it affecting the readiness of these PAs?
Another fantastic question. The imbalance comes from multiple sources. Military PAs often wear several hats at once: clinicians, officer, administrator, teacher, and sometimes de facto consultant for the entire organization. We operate inside a system with long duty days, frequent moves, and a high operational tempo that can rival most of our civilian settings. Compensation does not always reflect that level of responsibility or disruption to a family. Uh, and we look over time, that leads to moral fatigue. And when we think about that, people love the mission, but they become exhausted. And when an experienced PAs separate early, we lose clinical depth, mentorship capacity, and continuity for our units. So the absolute effect on readiness can be seen both in our garrison and our deployed environment. That's why we're so focused on this.
So you've also mentioned that, we need to treat recruitment and retention as these strategic imperatives, not administrative functions. I'm curious what that shift actually would look like inside of a military structure. Do you mind explaining that for a little bit?
Sure. Treating recruitment and retention as a strategy means you don't just count accessions or separations. That would be a fail. You manage the talent pipeline, and the way you manage, similar to managing aviation or cyber. At the strategic level, what that really means is leaders routinely review PA manpower, promotion, utilization data, and adjust policies to keep that right mix of skills and experience. At the operational level, it means deliberate career pathways, transparent assignments, and targeted incentives for those high demand specialties like orthopedics, emergency medicine, in certain locations. And at the tactical level, it means that leaders know their people. We have to track stressors like PCS timing, which is our movement, permanent change of station elements, and school schedules, spouse employment, and we've got to advocate early before problems turn into resignations.
So another thing that you've emphasized is leadership development and family stability as keys for retention. In your experience, what specific programs or changes could be made to make the biggest impact in these areas?
Yeah, fantastic question. The three things that stand out from my experience. First off, I've been in the military for 37 years and a PA since 1999. And so, from a structured leader development pipeline, PAs need deliberate opportunities to lead, serve in strategic staff roles, and attend high quality leadership education, which the military has afforded me and many of my colleagues, but not as afterthoughts, but as really planned steps. Second, more predictable assignment cycles with genuine input from the PA and their families. So people can really plan their children's school schedules, their spouses' careers, which is critical, elderly parent care without consistent crisis management. And then lastly, there needs to be targeted support during high stress periods. Such phases, we need mentorship and coaching, flexible scheduling to allow, when possible, that those individuals seek out behavioral health without stigma, support more timely leave approvals. And when people feel that they're seen as an entire whole being and not just as, a worker bee, they're far more likely to stay in and feel valued.
So let's dive in a little bit more into strategy and solutions, specifically the PA military. You outlined four key priorities: broadening recruitment, strengthening retention, modernizing the workforce, and tackling burnout. Um, if you could focus on just one of those right now, the one that you think is sort of the most important to tackle, where would you start and why?
Yeah, it's a great question. And if I had to pick one, starting as a lever and as the consultant, I choose retention always. Why? Because recruitment remains essential, but we keep pouring talent into a leaky bucket. We never get ahead. So we need to focus on retention and forced to address really the elephant in the room, which is burnout, which we see in both the military and civilian cultures. But we also got to look at our leadership culture, evaluate our assignment policies, and most importantly, ensure that our incentives are aligned with what we're asking people to do. When we improve those areas, it makes staying more attractive to new recruits and it doesn't serve as a byproduct of us trying to close a gap. And keeping experienced PAs really yields a lot more in readiness than we first thought. New graduates still need a lot of seasoning, and we need those experienced PAs to continue to drive change and become the mentors for that new generation. Just like in civilian settings, it's always great to have a new PA mirrored with a PA that's been practicing 20 years. It's your best outcome.
In regards to recruitment, you've suggested expanding direct commissioning at IPAP entry and partnering with ROTC programs. How can you see those pipelines being used to sustain the future of the PA force?
Yeah, excellent question. And it goes back to two things. One is that will expand our ability to diversify our PAs and look more like our civilian counterparts. And that direct commissioning into our training pipeline would allow us to compete earlier for high potential students, give them rank, identity, and benefits sooner, which is a paycheck, full health care that strengthen their commitment to military service before civilian options pull them away. And then partnering with ROTC and pre-health programs does a similar pattern of upstream benefit. We expose talented undergraduates to the PA profession and the military service as a leadership pathway, not as a backup plan. And over time, those pipelines then can become a stronger, steady flow of diverse, highly motivated officers that understand both medicine and the profession of arms from the very beginning.
So let's talk about modernization, things like telemedicine, credentialing, AI-enabled documentation, flexible scheduling. How close are we seeing, how close are we to seeing those changes become part of the standard practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're in the early to mid phase. Uh, Telemedicine is already being used, but credentialing and privileging policies still lag behind what technology can do. AI-enabled documentation and decision support tools are emerging, but we appropriately use caution, right, about safety bias and data security that I think our civilian counterparts must consider as well. And then flexible scheduling is often dependent on local leadership, right, from our commanders and mission requirements. However, I'm very optimistic through our research and data that the pressure is going in the right direction. We must continue to modernize to maintain readiness and to compete for the talent. The key to implementing these tools with the future PAs is going to remain that we have to be at the table. We have to shape what's being used. And ultimately, that technology can't be imposed on them. It has to be adopted, and they have to seek out approval and understand why we're doing it.
So in regards to that last part, I mean, a lot of people, I'm sure they hear AI and there's a little bit of unease, but how do we ensure these modernization efforts also protect the well-being and long-term sustainability of PAs in the uniform?
Another excellent question. Yeah, modernization has to be designed with the clinician in mind, right? And at the not just a metric, and it has to capture the patient too. That means that the testing of these new tools with frontline PAs, measuring their impact on time, cognitive load, and burnout, not just the productivity, is considered the baseline throughout. It means also using technology to remove low value tasks, streamline documentation, improve communication, rather than simply adding a box to click, which we sometimes do. And, and it also means building guardrails, reasonable expectations for after duty communication with our patients. Digital work has to have limitations, and clear limits on telehealth panel size as well is critical, right? Leadership has to be willing to say, we're going to use technology to protect our people, not squeeze them. And that just has to be the way we move forward.
So let's close things out with, giving our listeners a little bit more information on you, and you've had this extraordinary career that obviously will link to your webpage and all that stuff in our show notes. But from serving as a tactical medical officer at the White House to commanding entire medical regions, when you look back on your career, what gives you the most pride about today's generation of PAs in uniform?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm certainly not the most talented PA in the military or our civilian sector. What gives me pride is the courage and adaptability, the humility, empathy, and compassion that our force shows. Our PAs are amazing, and the generation of PAs has faced continuous change, and we see that today in every aspect of what we try to do, from policy to legal approval to support our clinical practice. But we also in the military, we see operational deployments, pandemics. We're involved extensively in the COVID task force and how PAs help with those type of restructuring, new technologies. And really, though, what really gives me the most excitement about PAs is showing up for fellow soldiers, families, and our mission. I'm proud of how they lead, not just as good clinicians, right? But they are mentors, innovators, advocates for our profession and our teams. And they check in with struggling soldiers before they go home. They check in on weekends. And I know that the future of military medicine is in such great hands because of the amazing PAs that I get to lead. So I'm very proud of them. I'm proud of our civilian PAs, and I love our profession.
That's amazing. You've also been a strong advocate for balancing mission with meaning. What does that phrase mean to you personally?
Yeah, thanks. For me, mission with meaning means that we do what is important. But why we do it and how we treat people along the way is really what matters. And I remind our PAs daily, very few people care what you did yesterday. They care what you do today and what you're going to do tomorrow. And the mission gives us direction, right? It's about us protecting our force, supporting our nation, and being ready to save lives at the worst moments. But in order to do that, we have to integrate and protect our profession. Meaning comes from our relationship. We are just like our civilian PAs. Our small acts of kindness, our mentoring, and our integrity is what people evaluate and watch us daily. And PAs across both our civilian and military employment are doing that daily. But we have to balance two things along with in the military that are different: hard deployments, long hours, and tough decisions, without losing our sense of our profession and ourself. And that balance has to be keep us grounded throughout our career. If not, we'll lose our way.
So, want to end our episode here by talking about the future and talking about the next generation of PAs, and for any of them that are possibly listening to this episode, especially those considering military service, do you have any advice you would offer as they begin their careers in this industry?
Absolutely. One of the key things that I tell all PAs, in order to be successful, you must have three characteristics. You need to be humble, you need to be empathetic, and you need to be compassionate. And you got to be consistent in what you do daily. And those fundamentals mean that we have to be the best at taking histories. We've got to be the best physical exam components in healthcare. Our clinical reasoning has to be sound, and our communication efforts need to be second to none. Technology will change, but those skills will always be your anchor. And second, you have to say yes to growth opportunities. And that whether that's in the military doing a deployment, challenging assignments, or fellowships or teaching, but at the end of the day, what it really drives is your ability to be flexible. Flexible is truly a game changer when you put it and mix it in with sound clinical reasoning, because it allows us to not become just disposable assets. In the end of the day, we have to remember that we're stepping into a profession, not just a job. and it carries with it a lifetime of learning. And NCCPA does a great job of forcing us to stay current, and we have to remember that that's critical. And without it, we can't remain humble. We can't have the courage or the commitment to lift our community up. But if we do it, and if you are a new PA or thinking about being a PA, you can have an amazing career and also have a meaningful life that supports the readiness of your home state or local community.
That's beautiful. Colonel Jones, thank you again for taking time to talk with us here on the PA Insights podcast. And as someone who comes from a military family, I just want to say thank you again for your service, and we look forward to hopefully having you back on the show sometime in the future.
Thank you so much, Jess. I really appreciate it.
We want to thank Colonel Jones for not only his service and leadership, but for sharing insight with us today and his perspective on all the issues of diversity, modernization, and the human side of readiness in the PA Corps. Today's conversation highlighted a profession in motion. From a younger, more diverse generation of PAs entering service to the expanding Generalist Plus model shaped by specialty training and telemedicine, to the urgent need for strategies that support retention, resilience, and long-term sustainability. If you'd like to dive deeper into the topics discussed today, you can explore more by visiting the links in our notes page. Stay tuned for more conversations with leaders shaping the future of the PA profession. Until next time, thank you for listening.